So today is UFC 280, and we're going to go ahead, we're going to talk about a couple of the fights that are on the card. And I meant to do this video a little bit earlier, I'm going to say that, maybe a couple of days ago, 2-3 days ago, but I ended up getting sidetracked, so my bad on that one. So we're only going to be talking about 2 fights on the card, and that's because, for one thing, this is a very last-minute video. I don't think anyone has time for a half-hour long, maybe even hour-long presentation about every fight on the card. But in addition to that, I'm also really only very excited about 2 fights on the card, and that is Islam Makhachev versus Charles Oliveira and Petr Yan versus Sean O'Malley. Now, I know Sterling versus Dillashaw is going to be the co-main event, and I'm sure that's going to be a really, really good fight, but I gotta be honest with you, I just really don't care that much about Aljamain Sterling or TJ Dillashaw. I'm just being honest with you. There's so many fighters in the UFC that it's impossible to keep up with every single one of the dudes that are in the top tier. You basically have to find some guys that you enjoy watching for whatever reason and stick with them. So Yan versus O'Malley. This is going to be a good fight, obviously, and I do think Petr Yan is going to win, which is pretty much what everybody believes, to my understanding. And the reason why I say this is because Petr Yan is a very basic fighter, and not basic in a bad way. He's basic in that he is not complicated. He doesn't do too many fancy things, and because of this, his fundamentals are near impossible to deal with for many people. Now, Sean O'Malley, on the other hand, he's very, very flashy, and he makes that work to his advantage as well. But that flashiness is really going to be a bit of a hindrance to him against someone like Petr Yan, in my opinion. Now, the reason I say this is because a dude from my region, a guy that I've actually been in the same room with before, and I fought one of his best friends years ago, ended up giving Sean O'Malley the hardest fight of his career on 2 weeks' notice. And the way he did this, his name was Chris Mutino, by the way, the way he did this was just pushing the pace, forward pressure, and not allowing Sean O'Malley to set. And I think Petr Yan, after a 6, 8, maybe even 12-week fight camp, is going to be able to do this even better than Chris Mutino on 2 weeks' notice. Now, on the other side of this, I want to say that Sean O'Malley can win. It is a fight, after all. Everybody always has a chance at all times. But if he's going to win, I think it's going to be on points. I'm going to be honest with you. And the way Sean O'Malley is going to have to fight is going to be almost kind of boring compared to how he usually fights. He's just going to have to try to outpoint Yan. He's not going to be trying to go for any kind of knockout or anything like that. I mean, I'm sure he will try to go for it if it's there, but it's going to be a lot harder to create those moments for him. And because of this, he's just going to have to stick and move, and not even in a really fun way or entertaining way. He's basically just going to have to keep trying to rack up points, and that's it. So when it comes to the big one, Oliveira versus Makhachev, a lot of people are counting Charles Oliveira out, and frankly, I don't know why. And for many different reasons, I'm actually going to pick Charles Oliveira. Now, when it comes down to it, they're actually both pretty evenly matched from the sound of it, from the look of it. Makhachev is basically considered to be Khabib Nurmagomedov if he could also box on top of having elite-level wrestling. And that's going to be very, very hard to deal with. But Oliveira also has extremely underrated hands. People still, after all of this time, after knocking out Justin Gaethje, for instance, they think he's still just a jiu-jitsu guy. And it's really insane to see. It's insane to think about. So they're pretty evenly matched. And what it's going to come down to, in my opinion, is the style. Now, who's going to be able to impose their style better? Makhachev has his wrestling, and that's going to be a very, very big asset, as it always is with him. And we're still learning about just how much of an asset wrestling is in MMA. But on the other side of that, Charles Oliveira's jiu-jitsu is extremely good. You could even say it's probably elite level at this point. And it's not just that he's very, very good at jiu-jitsu, because the thing is, not all black belts are the same, and not all jiu-jitsu is the same. Most of the guys that you see with BJJ black belts in the UFC, they don't train the kind of jiu-jitsu that's actually going to be good for MMA. And there's multiple reasons for this, and a lot of it is just that these guys don't really know better. They're just kind of doing whatever their coach tells them. But Charles Oliveira has the perfect jiu-jitsu for MMA. The way he ties up the hands, the way he's able to transition, the creativity that he utilizes in order to get different positions and things like that, he essentially has the anti-wrestler jiu-jitsu. A lot of wrestlers are kind of like anti-jiu-jitsu, meaning that the wrestling moves that they do tend to nullify your average jiu-jitsu movements and things like that, right? But Charles Oliveira has the inverse of that, where his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu can and does nullify the wrestling that someone like Makhachev has. And that is really what it comes down to. It's going to be style versus style, and it's really going to depend on who ends up gaining momentum, right? Who can keep up with the other? If Makhachev takes Charles down, is he going to be able to stop Charles from using his transitions and really just getting out in front of him? If Charles ends up being taken down, is he going to be able to nullify whatever wrestling or anything Makhachev is able to use? So as I said, whoever ends up being able to do that on the ground is going to end up winning. However, I do want to allow for a little bit of space for the possibility that nobody gets taken down, because that tends to be what happens when you have two elite grapplers facing off against each other. Nobody wants to end up sprawled on. Nobody wants to end up on bottom. So because of this, they don't actually shoot in for takedowns. They basically just box. And in which case, I still believe that Charles Oliveira will end up taking it, because, I mean, hey, he knocked out Justin Gaethje in a serious fashion. And I'm not one of those guys who's like, oh, he beat this guy, he beat that guy. But when somebody knocks someone like Justin Gaethje out in the manner that Charles Oliveira was able to KO him in, that says something. That was not just a lucky shot. It was not just Charles' day. That was a very, very deliberate move that was practiced and performed very, very well, perfectly, I guess you could say. So just to recap real quick, it's going to be Jan. As I said, that's really no surprise to anybody. I think he's going to end up winning because of the simplicity, and I also think he's going to end up pushing the pace, which is basically the kryptonite for someone like Sean O'Malley. When it comes to Makhachev versus Oliveira, I think Oliveira is going to win because I think his striking is better than Makhachev's, and I think that Makhachev will have a little bit of trouble with the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu of Charles Oliveira. So I'm going to try and get this out ASAP, okay? Like I said, I apologize. I meant to do this sooner, and somebody actually asked me to give my opinion on this like a month ago, and I completely and totally forgot. That's my bad. But anyway, if you like this video, feel free to leave a like and also subscribe for more. If you have anything to say, feel free to leave a comment down below. I want to know your opinion. Who do you think is going to win those two matches, or really any of the other fights that are on this card? Also, if you have any questions for me, feel free to hit me up on Instagram at ScottSullivanMMA, or if you want, you can just comment them below, honestly. Other than that, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, good luck out there.